Hello, everybody. I'm not Dana. I'm Andy, and I'm from Pacer Center, representing CTD Institute. We're going to start in just about a minute here. Dana, if you could please join us on the webcam. She'll be with us in just a moment. In the meantime, I would like to greet Amahani Anapuma, Barbara Thomas, Debbie Kali, Jackie Morales, Jacqueline Lewis, Lisa, and I think that's all we've got so far. A few more will filter in. Looks like we have a lot of Starbucks drinkers tonight. I tried to find some coffee places that were on the East Coast, and I haven't heard of some of these, but it's the Café Q&A, so I thought we'd start with a coffee theme. Okay, we will hide that for now. And those of you that are in attendance, I will bring this poll up at the end of our session as well. But if you could please put in what your role is so that we can find out who our audience is a little bit better. We have administrator, advocate, AT professional, or professional therapist. If you're an educator or a special educator, family support organization, or if your parent's caretaker or a family member, service provider, or student. Okay, let's see, we got 7, 8, and we have 8 participants. Okay, thank you everyone so much for putting in that info. We really do appreciate it. Okay, and I will make a brief introduction of Dana Nieder. She is the author of the Uncommon Sense blog, and she has presented for us a couple times this year so far, in May and 2 nights ago. So we are continuing on with the second part of the session, and this is our Q&A, where you are free to put in questions and comments in the comments and questions pod. And we have a few questions here that have been gathered from some of you that attended a couple nights ago from her webinar on AAC. And without further ado, please take it away, Dana Nieder.
Can you guys see me and hear me okay? Somebody's typing, so hopefully that's a yes. Okay, good. So, like Andy said, I have some questions that were sent over from the webinar, so I'm just going to kind of start working through some of those. But feel free to jump in with questions or comments. All of us are smarter than just me, so the more the merrier. The first question here came in and said, for a parent who's new to the idea of their child communicating with technology, what are some words of encouragement for them? And I think it kind of depends on exactly what their personal struggles are. I know that some parents are resistant to pursuing technology as a voice for their child initially. And to those parents, I think I would say that AAC, in addition to augmenting and providing an alternate route for speech, is also an intervention approach, a recognized intervention approach in speech therapy, meaning that it aids in the development of language skills and also in the acquisition of verbal speech. And so maybe that would be a good starting point, just to approach it as we're going to try this as an intervention rather than thinking too much of it as a possible future primary means of communication. It can help speed up speech acquisition for children. And really the bottom line is that at the end of the day, it's not really about you. It's about the child and their right to communication and their right to some form of accessible communication immediately while speech is developing. And then there are other parents who are kind of in the same situation that I was in when I started pursuing AAC for Maya, in that I was totally overwhelmed. 5.5 years ago, I had literally never heard of AAC. I had no idea what it was. And so when I heard of it, I knew I wanted it, but I was overwhelmed in how to get started or what to do, where to go. And so to those parents, I would say, you can do this. There's a lot of resources, especially on the internet now, and you can drive this bus and figure things out, at least enough to get started if you're stuck in a position where you have to do it by yourself, which is the position that I found myself in, and a lot of families do. And so I have some resources. I'm going to start cutting and pasting some things into some links. If you are in the position where you're going to be in charge of your child's AAC for a little while, you've got to get on board with social media. The reason that I joined Twitter was when I was researching different systems and trying to figure out what to do next. And I was already on Facebook, but started kind of looking into different groups. So here are some things. Let's see if I can start copying and pasting things in. There are some great users groups on Facebook. My personal favorite, which has a really nice mix of professionals and AAC families, and importantly, AAC users themselves, is the Speak for Yourself users group. And here, let's see if I can get this going here. There's a link to that group on Facebook. It's not just Speak for Yourself users, although that's the name of the group. There's people using lots of different systems. You definitely want to follow Practical AAC on Facebook and Twitter too. If you're jumping into Twitter, here's their link. Carol, who runs Practical AAC, along with her former partner, Robin, her partner in running the site, they've written amazing articles, and Carol now continues to put up amazing content and share great things about best practices and guest hosts from different people. You would want to follow, Lauren Ender's Facebook page. She is like the queen of links. She is sharing tons of articles and research every day. There you go. Then there are, this is my blog page on Facebook, kind of a mixed bag, but it gives you some personal stories, and that's probably the best place to contact me if you have questions or things I can help you with is through the Facebook page. There are also groups for specific devices and apps. If you're using the LAMP app, there's a users group for that. There's a Dynavox users group. I'm pretty sure there's a TouchChat users group. There's an Avaz users group. There's lots of users groups, along with groups for different diagnoses. And then on Twitter, here's my list of Twitter hashtags to follow. Okay, so on Twitter, which takes a little while to figure out if you're new to Twitter, but those are the hashtags that I would recommend checking out. AAC is kind of mixed because apparently it also stands for some athletic conferences, but ALCOM, the SL Keeps hashtag is for speech language pathologists, and even though I was a kind of wide-eyed new to AAC parent, there was a lot of research there and a lot of things about the perspective of an SLP that I found to be really helpful. If you're not afraid of kind of academic reading, it's a good place to really get in there and understand the field a little bit better from the professional point of view. So hopefully that answers that question. Any other thoughts on this before I move on? I'll wait a second.
So can you tell us a little bit about if it's easier to start with Twitter or Facebook or start with both? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I found back then there were a few specific users, an AAC family or two who was further along the path than I was, and I was really trying to touch base with a few people. and found them to be more accessible through Twitter rather than on Facebook where you have to friend someone. You know, it felt a little awkward, but you can follow anyone on Twitter and send them a little private message with a question. And that's how I connected with a lot of professionals who were really supportive and helpful to me in the beginning. I think now with so many users groups on Facebook, 5 years ago those just weren't a thing, that there's a lot of support now in those groups, especially a group that has a mix of parents and professionals. I've found to be really helpful because asking one question can yield results from several different kind of categories of people, and you can hear how a professional would approach something, and you can hear how families have dealt with similar challenges at home to the ones that you might be dealing with. I think the only thing to be cautious of is, you know, we all, I think everyone here wants to approach things from the perspective of presuming competence, using big systems, not starting small, and I think that you kind of have to have a discerning ear or eye when you're on social media, and if you start to see perspectives that aren't in line with that philosophy, you know what to filter out. But I've made some amazing connections in both of those places, and without the support of social media, I think that our story would have been very different, or quite a bit protracted, as I struggled to figure things out on my own without that support.
Okay, thank you.
So what are some tips for parents who feel overwhelmed at first with a robust AAC system? You'll get it. Next question. Just kidding. Yeah, I think that maybe one good piece of advice is to kind of sit with being overwhelmed a little. If you're looking at a system for the first time and finding it to be overwhelming, appreciate that and really sit in it and say, look at all of this. Because when you introduce your child to the system, they're going to have the same experience. I think pretty quickly you'll see that you start relying on the text, reading all of the labels for things. And so as you're kind of new and overwhelmed, think about the fact that your child is not going to have the same access to that text if they don't have literacy that we have as children. So it's good to appreciate that, because it kind of will help guide you in how you simplify and scaffold the system to make it accessible for you as a new user, and then also for your child. And as you kind of scaffold it down and simplify it, then you start using it. And that's really the easiest way to gain access or familiarity with the system, is just to really start using it as much as possible. First when the kids are asleep, and then with them during the day and modeling. And it's kind of like you kind of just you fake it, and you just kind of keep faking it until one day you realize you're not faking it anymore, that you really have become adept at navigating it, and that you've gained fluency in using that other language. And it's kind of like any other complicated thing that parents have to deal with. If your child needed hearing aids, or if they were asthmatic and you had to do nebulizer treatments, you just don't get to opt out. You don't can say, no, that's a little complicated for me, so I don't think so. You figure it out. You keep trying, and you get better at it.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's look at the question from Kelly. Do you see that on your side, Dana?
I do. Yeah, I see 2 questions from Kelly.
Okay. I'm gonna change these to red to indicate that they're the question that's on the deck right now that you're addressing. How about that?
Okay. So Kelly asked, any recommendation for low-cost AAC apps? I'm looking for technology to play with, but could not justify spending $200 on Speak for Yourself or more on apps such as Proloquo to Go just for this reason. I can't. I don't have any low-cost AAC apps that I could recommend. Really, I'm not sure exactly what the, by playing with it, I'm not sure exactly what the intention is. If you are a professional, for anybody out there who might be an SLP, I know that there are several apps that you can get a free copy of for trialing with clients or students. I know Speak for Yourself is a professional copy. I know that, I'm pretty sure that Dynavox Compass does a professional copy. I'm honestly not sure about the others, but it never hurts to ask if you have one that you're looking at that you want to experiment with. Speak for Yourself also has a light version, which is free. It only has, I'm not even sure really, it maybe has like 6 core words open and a few secondary words, just for the purpose of kind of toying with it to see if it might be a possibility that works. But you know, there's a wide field of AAC apps, and if you're looking for something free or low cost to play with, the best place to look is Jane Farrell's list, who is there. That's how her name is spelled, Jane Farrell, 2 R's, 2 L's. And if you Google Jane Farrell's AAC app list, she has a huge extensive list where she basically reviewed everything on the market. Sorry, I have a little cold, so I keep clearing my throat. She's kind of reviewed everything that's out there, and so that would be the place to go to find what you're looking for. And her second question was, how do you tell the difference between exploring, practicing, or playing versus just stimming? Should this distinction be made? I've definitely seen this done in my observations of self-contained classrooms, and I'm wondering if this was not the best idea after all. So on Tuesday, we kind of talked a little bit about stimming versus babbling. Babbling being a really important part of learning a device, having free time to explore, to press buttons. I talked about the different reasons why somebody might babble, like they like the auditory feedback of the noises, or they're trying to annoy their mother because both of my kids have done that before, or they're memorizing the locations or practicing finding words, or learning the auditory pattern for a word in their head, kind of doing that auditory rehearsing, like if you listen to your new favorite song on the radio and you listen over and over again to learn the melody so that you can sing along. A lot of professionals who aren't very immersed in AAC best practices think of this type of babbling as stimming, and that it's a negative thing that needs to be corrected. And it's an interesting question, how to make the distinction. I think that it's worth trying to analyze what the motivation is, simply for your own knowledge of what the user is going through. Do they need that auditory repetition? Are they learning something? Is there a specific set of words that they're really focused on that maybe you want to open up or that you want to explore? But in a classroom, I really think that the bottom line comes down to just responding to the AAC device and the AAC user as you would if it was speech from a typical child. So if it's the middle of class and Maya is making a giant string of no, 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 I would expect that her teacher would say, Maya, that's not appropriate right now. You know, we're not calling out no, the same way she would if a typical child was using their voice that way. That's kind of my non-professional answer. As I thought more about it, I thought also in terms of stimming, I think I would also think about whether there was a certain area of the screen that was being accessed repeatedly. Like, could there be an access issue? Is somebody really only targeting one area in terms of access, or are they having trouble getting to different areas? So I think that would also be worth analyzing. But again, that's just kind of me thinking aloud. I'm not in a professional classroom. I haven't worked with a ton of AAC users, so It's my best guess.
Okay. Thank you, Dana. I'm going to paste in a question from Lisa that put it in the chat pod a few minutes ago. Do you see it there?
I do. I'm looking right now. Oh, that is interesting. Okay, so Lisa says she has 3-year-old twins. In case you're not reading along, I'm just listening. She has 3-year-old twins, both with autism spectrum disorder and nonverbal. And she's looking at AAC and wondering if I would have any tips on how to work with both of them at the same time with modeling when they are very different in terms of understanding and attention. It's a great question. So I have 2 children who, Maya is 7, and she has been a primary AAC user since she was 3.5. And then Will is her little brother, who is now 3, and we gave him an AAC device at 17 months just because she had one. So he has typical speech for a 3-year-old, but uses AAC sometimes to repair his speech. For a little while, they were both using AAC a lot, and that was probably when Will was maybe 2.5, right in that spot of toddler development where you're understanding everything, but you can't really make it come out quite yet. And so I was in a situation where I had 2 users at home with me who were very different. So Maya was more advanced; she had more sophisticated language. Will was a little guy who couldn't have all the same buttons open. But in terms of modeling for both of them, it's an interesting question. I think that I tended to just model the way that I would have for her, who is the more advanced user. And he had a simpler page set. So we had 2 devices. Maya had her iPad mini, Will had a full-size iPad. And so I would model for both of them, kind of sit between them, and I would model for both of them, but his screen was much more simplified. So she maybe got a few more advanced words that he wasn't getting. You know, if I said, like, let's go play, I might model the whole thing for her, let's go play, and then for him, just hit the play at the end. But I think it really depends on your kids, because pretty quickly he wanted to see what was going on her screen, and he wanted his screen to look like her screen. But if you think about kind of any AAC question that I puzzle over for a little while, I go back to thinking, what would happen if they were both 2 kids learning speech? And what would happen is they would both be listening to you. Whatever sentence comes out of your mouth, they're both going to hear at the same time. And so when you think about the modeling, you might have to model a little bit differently if maybe one child has some trouble attending, or they're not going to focus on multiple word combinations. But really, they're both getting the same auditory input. And the same way that we speak to babies using all of our words before they're ready for words, you still want to provide enough of that accessible language input that they can both give it back to you. It's kind of a tough question to answer without having a lot more information, so I feel like that answer is kind of vague. But without a ton of specifics, it's kind of the best that I can come up with. I hope it helps a little bit, but if you have a follow-up, just shoot it out there.
Okay, all right, thank you, and thank you to Lisa as well for that question. Okay, Dana, why don't you get to pick the next one? Maybe one from Bo or Jordana?
Okay, let me see. Okay, I see Bo's question here. So, Bo says, excuse me. Bo says, for many months, my daughter's primary means of communication has been signing. We've modeled a lot of signs, but the only ones that she's using consistently are eat and more. As we model speak for yourself at mealtime, she clearly signs eat and more, but is reluctant to use the app. So she's communicating for every bite, but just not with speak for yourself. When you talk about how to handle modeling when the child is signing. After all, we don't want to discourage signing if she's reliably using it to communicate. Should we just use the app to repeat, eat more, and then add whatever words are relevant in the hope she'll eventually use signs and the device? The goal is communication, right? So we want our kids to become communicators, and they're going to have to make the choices of how to communicate on their own. So whatever works, works. And the trick of it is that the output has to be receivable to the communication partner. So if you're eating dinner with your daughter and she's signing, that's great output for her. She's choosing how to communicate. And it's receivable to you because you understand her signs. That's a great situation. I wouldn't stress at all about her switching to use the device in a situation like that because she's choosing some way to communicate, and I would just honor that, and that's fantastic. The problem will be if she goes to school and they don't understand her signs for eat and more, or if she has a substitute teacher or is trying to talk to the nurse at a doctor's appointment and they don't know those signs. So as Maya has kind of developed more speech over the years, she's dropped out some words from AAC for a long time, and now they're kind of coming back because she'll make questions and sentences where she'll put all the words in. But for a while, when she gained a word in speech, she tended not to use that on the device. I remember when she was little, I don't know, probably 3.5 or maybe 4, she was saying the sentence, "I want yogurt, please." And with speech, she could say, "I want please." But she didn't have a sound for yogurt. So what she did is she turned to me and she said, "I want," and used her device and said, "yogurt," and then went back to speech and said, "please." So it was kind of this like Maya crafted sentence where she was using speech and the app. And when she started doing that, what I would do is just continue to model, especially words that I thought might be more difficult for a listener to understand. So in the example that you have, at dinner time, if she signed more, I would probably say, "Oh, you want more? Okay." And as I said more, I would activate that on the device. So, "Oh, you want more? Okay, here you go." Kind of showing her, I totally get your more, and it's perfect, and I'm going to honor that communication, but also showing her at the same time, if somebody didn't get that more, here's how you do it with your device, so that she's still getting that modeling instruction to know there are many ways of getting this point across, and if I'm in a situation where the sign doesn't work, I have it here in a different way. Yeah. Well, you also said communicating with every bite, which was probably just for the sake of the example. And I remember, I remember reaching out to somebody who was an AAC parent whose child was older and saying in the beginning, like, "How did you do it? What words did you start with? How did you start doing it?" And he said to me, "It was a lot of food." A lot of like, "Oh, she said cookie, give her another one." Just because kids love food. I mean, I love food. Everyone loves food. So food is a great motivator, but also I wouldn't don't make her communicate for every bite, because if I made my son communicate for every bite, he'd be like, "Are you kidding me? You know I want another bite." There's no no greater motivation than food. I mean, I would do some great stuff for more food too. I've got tea right now, but I'm gonna have candy when we're done. So yeah, I hope that helps. And that's kind of what I still do with Maya at school. At school, they tell me a lot, "Oh, we understand her. She wants to talk. She doesn't want to use the device at school." She's the only device user in her class. Her speech really in the past year has been developing a lot. She mostly talks at home, but she needs the device to say more sophisticated ideas. And that's what I keep telling them. Like, you just have to model. She will not be able to speak in a way that's understandable if a substitute came in. She will not be able to tell I went to the playground on Thursday and I saw that one girl that I knew from preschool with her voice. You're not going to get it. And I know that they think they understand things that she's saying, that even when I've just kind of dropped in, I've been like, oh, that's not, she didn't say more, she said mouse, because there was a picture over there. And so I'm just constantly telling them, honor her speech, it's fantastic. If she doesn't want to use the device, you never say you need to use this or say it with your device. But what you can say is, I don't understand. Let's find a different way to say that. And what you can be doing is just modeling throughout the day, so that should she have a communication breakdown, she knows, oh, I can always use Mini when I'm here, because that's another way to say this.
Okay, thank you for that. And yeah, Bo, that was a terrific question. It's funny how so many things keep coming back to food and working with young people, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, everyone.
Okay, next question, you pick.
Okay, I'm trying to see. Okay, here's Jordana's question. I'm wondering whether you continued using NoTech AAC with Maya when helping her learn and speak for yourself at home. Yes, I did. At the time, she was using something that I call the word book, which is like this really big 3-inch yellow binder just stuffed with pages of Velcro cards, and we had been using that maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months right before we got Speak for Yourself. And so that giant binder traveled back and forth with her to preschool. She was about 3.5. And when we got the app, we started using it at home, and we just kind of always had the binder right there. So again, you know, the kids get to choose. It's their communication. They have to pick whatever feels the most organic and natural to them. I didn't ever want her to think like, oh, I want to say this thing and I know right where it is in my binder, but I don't know where it is in this new system. It's not really fair to kind of pull the rug out from under her and say like, oh, you've been speaking binder language, and now no more of that. Now we only speak iPad language. So I kept sending, we started with Speak for Yourself at Home. We had it at home for maybe 8 or 9 days before we started sending it into the preschool. And then I would send both of them. So we sent in the iPad and the Word book. And I think it was about 2 weeks later that I got a note from the teacher in the communication notebook, and and I saved the note, I took a picture of it. And it said, you don't need to send the Word book anymore. She never looks for it. She's doing a great job with the app, and that's all that she wants. But we let it be her choice. And then the word book sat on her little bookshelf in her room for, I guess, like 2 years probably. And sometimes she'd pull it out and take all the cards off and play with them. But she no longer wanted to use it in a communicative way. It was just kind of something fun to play with. And do I have an opinion? Excuse me. About whether to use photos or symbols for beginning users when programming new words and to Speak for Yourself. No, I don't really have an opinion. I think that the general information is that it doesn't, if you're using a system like Speak for Yourself or the LAMP Words for Life app or a PRC device or the new, I haven't seen it yet, but I think the new ProLoco to Go page sets, the bigger ones are more motor planning based, where the words kind of stay the same. And the idea is if you're using a system where the words are always in the same place, the actual kind of icon isn't as important, because the child doesn't have to rely as much as scanning and recognizing those pictures, since they're always in the same place. Similar to like how you don't look at the letters on your keyboard when you're typing if you've been typing for a long time, because you just know where they are. That being said, you just pick whatever you feel like works best for you. There were definitely some tiles that we had been using in the Word book with certain, I think at that time they were board maker images. I know that I moved the one over for yogurt I think for milk, I just felt like we had already been using some symbols, and even though it might not be that important, any little tiny thing I could do to kind of facilitate her transition to the new system, I was really excited to do, because I felt like it gave me a little bit more of a purpose as I was trying to help her kind of immerse herself in the new system. Certainly for people who use photos, it's not as important to her now, because she also can read the labels. So for her friends at school this year, we just have their names in with little cartoon pictures, because she can recognize the names of who they are. But when she was in preschool, we used photos, because that was a better thing to do for her. But in terms of the actual symbol language, if you're using something with motor planning, it doesn't really matter as much. So
okay. Hey, there's a follow-up question from Jordana here in the comment box. She says, just wondering if she pointed to pictures in the binder or removed the picture to exchange.
Oh, she kind of a combination. Well, she pointed. So I had the front of the binder also had Velcro on it, and inside were these sheets with a few hundred words, I think, by the time we were done. And I used the front of the binder almost like a static board display with words that could kind of rotate in and out. So there were some words that were always fixed, like I, you, help, more, bathroom, yes, no. And then other words like types of foods, types of animals, they were kind of noun heavy, because I didn't really know how else to do it. I didn't have any idea how somebody would do verb senses or something with Velcro cards. But I would if we were going to the zoo, we would take out a bunch of the animal cards and put them on the front of the binder, so that she could talk about zoo animals without needing to kind of flip around. If something wasn't on the front and she wanted to talk about it, she would take that card out of the binder and stick it on the front. But no, we didn't do like a PEC system sort of exchange protocol. Just motorically, I didn't really see the point of it. It's hard for her to pick up the cards. It's hard for her to do Velcro. And I knew that I was hoping to move to a system that would be high tech and give her a large amount of vocabulary. And so she would kind of point to it, and I would read the words. I'm thinking right now, I know there was a video of her pointing, like, I want milk, please. And I was, as she kind of pressed it with her finger, I would read it out and be the voice.
Okay, thanks. Hey, what do you think of question number 8 there? I think that's a question that comes up a lot. I mean, I know a lot of people have this on their mind about how much to help and how much to let their child struggle to get it for themselves.
It's so tricky. It's a hard question. So number 8 asked about if you're listening along instead of reading. It says, for a parent that's used to mind reading and speaking on behalf of their child, it can test their patience when waiting for a child new to AAC to complete their thoughts. Can you elaborate some more on why it's so important to wait and not fill in the blanks as your child uses AAC? So I think it's hard, because if you're the parent of a non-speaker, like I am, man, our kids have to work really hard, don't they? To say anything. And I see my son who has typical speech, and he can just like, it's been amazing to watch him talk so much. And also has kind of driven the point home again from a few years ago, like, Maya works so hard. She works so hard. And so if I think I know what she wants, or I'll speak in the past tense because this is more my perspective a while ago. But if she went and stood in front of the freezer at breakfast time, and I knew, or I thought I knew, that she wanted a waffle from the freezer for breakfast, it's really hard not to facilitate that, to jump in and say, like, oh, oh, honey, you want a waffle? Because you just want to help. I mean, it seemed like I'm making things more difficult for her by waiting, by making her come up with it, by making her say something. But as time has gone on, and I've learned more about AAC users and thought more about it and kind of analyzed and self-analyzed, our kids learn to be passive in conversation really early on. Whereas a child with typical speech learns to take their conversational turns, to argue, to speak up for themselves. Our kids do a lot of learning that if they just wait like this, or maybe make a noise or point or like get up in their parent's face, that somebody's going to come and help them out. Maya knew, from a very young age that if we were in the elevator and a neighbor said, "Hi Maya, how are you?" she just kind of would look. And she knew eventually I'd be like, "She's good, we're going to the mall," or "We're going for a walk, going to the playground." We're used to stepping in and kind of saving them, and they need to start stepping up to that plate because the world is not going to fill everything in correctly. So in terms of the whole mind reading idea, here's what happens if you're filling things in. Let's think of a few examples. If your child comes home from school and points to the cabinet where their favorite cookies are, a pretty reasonable assumption would be like, "Hey, I'm home, let's have those cookies, let's have a snack." But what if the person they sat next to at lunch brought those cookies in for lunch today and they want to tell you that? What if the matron on the bus sits with a bag of cookies every day on the way home and eats them? What if their teacher was handing out cookies to everyone today and ran out right before they got to your child and they didn't get a cookie? You can invent a million complicated narratives that our children would have no way of saying. And if you step in with like, "Oh, you want cookies?" then probably they're just going to be like, "Okay, yeah, sure, give me cookies." Because what else is there to do? Or if you have a dog and the dog sneezes and the child points at the dog and laughs, it could be sneezes are funny, or that was just funny how the dog sneezed. Or it could be like, "Remember that one time I was trying to sleep and the dog kept sneezing?" Or "Remember when Grandma sneezed and knocked over the water at Thanksgiving?" It could be anything. And if we are making these mind-reading kind of predictions of what they're trying to say, we are subconsciously and completely unintentionally limiting kind of what we think of as their speech capabilities. We are limiting them to only communicating about the stuff in the immediate surroundings, generally, if they're pointing or gesturing or walking to something. And we're also limiting them to only talking about things that are happening in the present tense. So if you don't have a way to refer to remember when something happened in the past, or to talk about something that's going to happen in the future, like could we go get more of those cookies tomorrow when we're at the store, you're going to unintentionally probably simplify some of their thoughts. And that's an unfortunate road to kind of start walking down. And it took really thinking about some of these kind of examples for me to really get it all the way, and to see that the long-term importance of encouraging your child to speak up and waiting them out and making some things more difficult, making them get a little frustrated and starting to advocate for themselves at home and kind of fight to speak up a little bit, they're going to have to learn that lesson. Please, they have to learn that lesson, because otherwise you're going to have a child who can't speak out in the big bad world where we're not going to be all the time. And so even though it feels difficult and unfair sometimes for us to make things tricky for them, the safest way and the best way to start learning that is to do it at home, where they're going to have our support. So it's not mean to wait them out and make them fight to speak up a little bit. It has to happen. And even if you think you're reading their minds, you're you're getting it wrong sometimes. And it's a good thing that you're getting it wrong, because that means that their thoughts are probably more complicated and interesting than you're assuming.
Okay, thank you for that. So, that's a complex, it's a simple question with a complex answer. A lot of things to take away from that. It sounds like some things in there about you might be hijacking their opportunity to learn on their own. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Thank you. How about another one?
Okay.
Is your throat holding out?
Yeah, I feel bad that I keep coughing, and there's nothing I can do. Let me see. I'm trying to kind of see which ones we've done already. Oh, okay, wait, I see one. Okay, number 3 on this list. It says, if you're new to AAC, sometimes it feels like the best choice is to let professionals guide the AAC process. Can you speak to why it's important for a parent to be invested and engaged in their child's AAC learning? Sure. So this was definitely something that I did as well. I started learning about AAC. I did a bunch of research. I had the companies come to my home to show me their products. I watched videos of a ton of apps online and emailed users and emailed companies. And then I signed Maya up to get an AAC evaluation from the Board of Ed. And I thought, I have really educated myself, and I'm ready for this type of meeting, but also I want her to be evaluated by a professional, and they will be able to help guide us. I had some leanings, but I thought this professional will be able to guide us to the right path. And what I learned was, even though if we think about our approach, I'm assuming that all of us here are on the same page about presuming competence and starting with a robust vocabulary and kind of immersing our children in language the same way we immerse typically speaking children in speech input. We're going to immerse our AAC children in modeling. It all seems very much like common sense. But what I didn't realize was that so many professionals still subscribe to an older model of like, okay, if we have a child who's never used anything before, let's give them 8 buttons so as not to overwhelm them, and let them learn the system, and then once they show mastery of that, they'll be ready for more. As much as I disagree with that approach, I can see the rationale. I can see why somebody who has been working, employed, conceivably by other people who have the same mindset, would think that that approach is common sense, that we wouldn't want to give somebody so many buttons and overwhelm them, and they won't be able to use the system, and they'll be discouraged. I saw how that line of thinking also seems like common sense. So professionals who subscribe to that sort of philosophy would think that they're doing the right thing, but might totally not be doing the right thing, which is why it's so important for us as parents and advocates to make sure that we're educated, and if we decide to get a formal evaluation done, to be ready to critique that evaluation from a research standpoint, from a common sense standpoint, from the standpoint of that sort of candidacy model being outdated, like from the 90s, and now the model being that everyone deserves AAC, everyone has the right to participate. And the important thing here is that the parents know, you know your kid. So I saw Maya had several evaluations, and in this AAC evaluation, the evaluator asked her, she had a display with different animal cartoons, farm animals, and a few zoo animals were on there too. And so she took out a few little plastic animals like a sheep and a horse and camel or something, and said, you know, okay, Maya, here's the board. Which animal do you want to play with? The cow, the sheep, or the chicken? And Maya looked around the board really carefully, looked, and then hit zebra. And looked over at me and went, and just gave me this smile like she knew it was funny. She was like, zebra, you don't have a zebra. Let's see what happens next. And the evaluator was like, okay, didn't know how to pick one of the choices that I outlined. Got that one wrong. So we have to be involved, and we have to ensure that whoever is driving the AAC bus for our children is the one who believes in them the most. And AAC, knowledge of AAC systems, particularly small AAC systems, doesn't make somebody more qualified to make decisions about our children's systems than a parent who is ready to presume competence and to do the work of implementing at home. Because any AAC professional should know that the factor that will most determine that child's success is not even the system that they're using, but the amount of involvement and modeling that's going to happen in all of the aspects of the child's life, especially at home with the family.
Okay, thank you. Hey, I'm going to add in a question here near the top. This was somewhat of a late addition from Maureen. I don't know that she is present tonight, but she sent it through email earlier. Do you see it at the very top?
Oh, yes, no, I do now. Yes. Okay, so Maureen is wondering how to balance being too demanding with the school team. She wants to get more training from her to the paraprofessionals and is struggling on how many people to include on emails and whether to stop emailing the people that she knows are not open to really learning to use the system. Also, how to get a spouse on board with using a speech-generating device more. Okay, so there's a few different things in there. Getting the team on board is tricky. And I used to be a classroom teacher. I was a 5th and 6th grade science teacher for 9 years before I kind of entered this world of special needs. So I try to really think of it kind of all around the topic, what it would be like if you were in the school, what it's like if you are the parent, and it's tricky. I try to start with understanding what's happening in the classroom or at the school that is the barrier to their ability to embrace the device. So do they feel shorthanded in the classroom? Is the child not showing interest in the device in the classroom, and so it feels like a fight to even get it on the desk in front of them because they don't want it there? Are they lacking training? Do they erroneously feel like it's too complicated for the child to use? Getting to the heart of what the problem is, I think is kind of key in figuring out what the best solution is. Because you want to start by understanding the people that you're talking to. If you're just kind of saying like, you need to do this, that's not going to be the best way, obviously, to kind of draw everyone together. In terms of kind of getting training in, starting to really educate the team and help them support your child, I would probably ask for a meeting with the paraprofessionals, but also I would probably bring treats. I would bring a few boxes of donuts and a carton of coffee from Dunkin' Donuts, or bagels, or if it's after school, a few bags of candy, or something, just something that's like, I appreciate what you're doing. I can't wait for you. Food brings people together. It's true though. I mean, I've been to so many professional development meetings, and if they just kind of pass around a bag of Kit Kats or something, you're like, oh, thanks. thanks for appreciating the fact that at the end of the day for me, I'm tired, and thank you for doing something to kind of treat us nicely. So I would do that. I would say, like, I am so excited to meet with you guys. I have a few really great things to show you. I would love to bring in breakfast on Friday morning before school and meet with you guys. Or I would love to bring in something, whatever, after school and have a quick 30-minute meeting. It's just like a nice touch to kind of draw everyone in. I would, at that meeting, I would show videos. I think videos are one of the most powerful ways to get people on board who might be hesitating. If they are AAC non-believers, videos help them see, and seeing is believing. If they just feel a little defensive, maybe AAC is new to them, they feel uncomfortable because they're not familiar with it, or they feel like they wouldn't be able to do it or wouldn't have a good job. Just a few videos that show how simply modeling is. That it's just pushing buttons while you talk. It's not, you guys can totally do this, or you're going to be amazing at it. Any good videos are good, but videos with your kid are the best. If you could set up a tripod and get a few video clips of him using it at home, of you using it with him at home, a quick little conversation exchange, him saying something, that the people get excited. These are, your kids at home. Hopefully they care deeply about the kids that they're working with, and they are going to want to facilitate that sort of success when they see it happening. Should I email people who, okay, yeah, so if you're in a situation where you feel like you're just begging everyone to participate all the time, I would try to find an inside man. So find whichever professional seems to be the most interested, or whichever professional seems to kind of honor your kid the most. So maybe they don't know anything about AAC, but you can tell that that occupational therapist really loves your kid, then that's the person you want to get. Get somebody inside to be on board with you, so that when you're going to a meeting, you can bring that person in and say, and Mrs. Smith is using it in OT, and she's really seeing some great things happening. Could you talk a little bit about that, Mrs. Smith? If you can't find somebody on the inside to be your inside man, try to bring in an outside man. So a private speech therapist who is on board with AAC, and a device rep, or a rep from one of the app companies who might travel and do professional development, some other speech language pathologist, just somebody who is a professional, because sometimes, as unfortunate as it is, sometimes a parent is just a parent, which is one of the reasons that I'm now in school to become a speech pathologist, because it's frustrating, especially if you know a lot about what you're doing. But sometimes you just need to find somebody else who is a professional to come in and basically say everything that you were saying, but with that certification behind their name. And then you can just kind of sit there and nod along and be like, excellent point. I've made it several times this year, but we should definitely all listen to it now that we have some great professionals here who are saying it too. And sometimes that's it, just finding a partner, whether it's on the inside or the outside, so that it's not just you, because it's frustrating and difficult for it to feel like you're in a situation where it's you kind of versus the team. So you got to find a way to wiggle that in, whether it's food or convincing somebody to help out from the inside, or bringing in an expert who might be able to do more of a universal sort of just like AAC training.
Okay, we are just about out of time. We have 1 minute left. Dana, I was wondering if you could quickly respond to the second to the last question in our notes window here, the one that talks about culturally laden images. If you could just say a few words on that. I know we're running short on time. And thank you everyone who has stuck with us for this last hour. Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, well, it's easy for me to only say a few words on that because I don't know too much about that. The question says, So many images and icons are used for AAC, and I wonder how these culturally laden images play out when used by children from a different background, which is a really interesting point that I had really never spent any time thinking about before seeing this question. And then I tried to kind of think through some of them in my head. And some of the symbol languages are pretty straightforward. Like symbol sticks comes to mind, which a lot of it is based in stick figures, which are I think not super culturally biased. Although I don't know, maybe other cultures don't use stick figures, but certainly things like an eat button that has a picture of a hamburger on it, if you have never eaten a hamburger or you're not from a culture that eats hamburgers, it was interesting to think about. And so I really don't know. I don't know if there are symbol sets that have been devised that are more kind of stemming from other cultures. What I do know is that if you're using a tablet-based app, most of them have the ability to swap out images for anything that you want. So you could plug your own set in that feels more culturally appropriate for your family. But again, I don't really know what other sets might be out there, or if you just
all right. Okay. A lot of good ideas there. Thank you so much. And that about wraps it up for this evening. I see by the clock on my wall that it is 8:31 Eastern Standard Time and 7:30 for the Midwesterners like myself. I'd like to thank Lisa for her question, and a special thanks to Bo and Kelly and Jordana, who submitted some questions beforehand so that they could make this conversation much more rich and interactive. So thank you all. All right, we are concluded with our Q&A session, and we look forward to seeing you come on to ctdinstitute.org. And over and out. Thank you, Dana.
Thanks, Andy. Have a good night. Thanks, everyone, for coming. It was great to talk.